With the heart of the Huntress season coming to a close, I thought that it would be nice for us, me, Boulevard, you, the community, to take a stroll down memory lane, remind everyone what happened over the course of the season, who's qualified for Worlds, and all that good stuff. So when we kicked things off in the expansion release, the overwhelming perception was that this was a low-power set, which doesn't feel great since we've moved to about every 3.5 months for set releases now. Really doesn't feel great when they don't come in and shake up the meta. There was, of course, an exception to this in Siren Song, the 4-mana card on release, came in and overwhelmingly demolished the first Runeterra Open, with Ian Nogueira winning with triple Siren Song in the Americas, Ragnarosik winning with single Siren Song in EMEA, and a Korean name that I can't translate, winning with double Siren Song over in APAC. So that kicked things off. It wasn't a great taste in everyone's mouth. We can see the numbers here are pretty absurd. 110 Reavers Rose Alani, plus the 78 Champion Strengths Alani, which didn't really pop up until the week of the Open. This was Lucian Alawi, for those of you that don't remember. Well, the Reavers was usually like Fizz Diana, I think, is what we usually got, or Fizz something. It was Fizz and then another champion. You had some options there. And then, like, as we can see, Jack Sorn at 46. The next one. So then we get patch 4.7. Everyone's pretty happy about this, right? We're really just looking to see what happens to Siren Song. It gets absolutely taken out back down to 6 mana. And there are some other important updates in this patch, such as Plaza Guardian taking a nerf in order to sort of just shore up the Eternal meta, even though it's the off-season for it. You don't want the casual ladder of that sort of dominated by this. You don't want to have to worry about this when it actually comes time for the Eternal patch. Just get that one squared away. And then down here, we actually get Glacial Saurion getting a buff, even though it was seeing play, and Warden going down to 8 mana, and those would come up a little bit later. Then we move into the Worlds Qualifier. We're still in Standard, and this is a bit of a controversial meta. It was just a lot of older decks. This is what happens when you have a low power set or one high power card that then gets nerfed. You just go back to a bunch of classics. And we can see much lower representation at this event, 67 for the #1 deck, where that would have been #3 at the previous Open. And we got Jace Heimer taking the top spot, Vayne Aatrox, Nasus, Bandle Jinx. Jhin Broadmane's really the only sort of like newer deck that's kind of doing anything. Everything else has existed before. Pink Seraphine even existed before, Alawi Swain. Like, you can see that we really have not gotten very far in terms of new cards popping up and making big impacts. But this was the Worlds Qualifier, and that did automatically qualify to Tank Buster from the Americas. At least I got the CS from EMEA, and Sora Haru from APAC directly into the World Championship later this year. Of course, that's absolutely huge for them, and everyone else picked up some good points along the way. But ultimately, a lot of people thought this was a very healthy meta. A lot of people thought this was a very boring meta. And compared to the finish that we saw in the first Runeterra Open, it's certainly a less flashy meta. Then comes patch 4.8. We're ready to shift gears for Eternal. This is also a variety patch, and they actually kind of knock it out of the park with a lot of the variety cards. I don't know that we're ever going to get a variety patch where every card comes in and has big meta implications, but I think they got about half of them here. Divine Draft is seeing play in Seraphine Samira. The Storm Raptor not fitting in, nor is Tidal Invocation just yet, but I've got some hope for this one. Dark Wraith, very much a content creator card. Same with Crimson Banquet Hall, which was theory crafted, but still hasn't really come to fruition. Cosmic Hall was obviously one of the defining cards of the meta, breathing a lot of much needed life into the Invoke archetype and making it skyrocket in play rate, as you'll see when we get into the breakdown. Balin the Benevolent actually did a lot for solidifying the Demacia Freljord archetype that we've seen popping up over the last couple of months. The Jarvan Vayne Freljords, the Galio Udyrs have kind of finally been solidified as like Poppy Galio and Fiora Galio. And then Valley of Imitation, not only is it a content creator card, but this has real competitive implications, especially with some of the newer cards that are going to be coming out, but for the most part, didn't have a big impact on the Eternal Open. And then, there's just, this was a huge patch. People absolutely loved it. You can see me just scrolling through it, like how many cards were changed. So then we get into this, and as you can see, while Siren Song was split up in a couple of different categories, if you would combine the Siren Song Reavers Road decks, you would have had 188, which would have overtaken the Invoke here. But it didn't. So Invoke came in, absolutely dominated the Eternal Runeterra Open. When we talk about what won, we've got single Invoke in the Americas with Chinos TCG taking the win. We've got single Invoke in Gamov with EMEA, and we've got double Invoke with Koa in APAC. So Invoke didn't have sort of the triple Invoke did show up. Got second place in the Americas with What Am I, a longtime Invoke player, so it's not like triple Invoke was unheard of, like you couldn't do it, like people were running triple champions, or triple Reavers Row and Siren Song at the beginning of the format. So this one's been a little bit weird. And then when we get into, you know, sort of who's qualified at the end of all of this, of course, we have our champions from the World Championship qualifier. And then, assuming no crazy shakeups, I believe Seku and Roji are guaranteed in. No one can overtake them on points. Tank already being qualified. Poke King can't get another 7. And Space just needs a good ladder finish. They'll be in. We go down to EMEA. We've got Black Boy, Thames, and Branch of Turtwigs. Again, a pretty solid gap between Turtwigs and Vendorti in 4th place. So these players pretty much solidified. Black Boy definitely in. Thames and Branch of Turtwigs have a chance to be overtaken, or at least tied with, I think. I don't remember the point breakdown for ladder off the top of my head. And then when we get into APAC, we have a much, much tighter race with 8 players all being within 4 points of each other, with Runeterra, Reroll, and Zanku leading. Reroll, of course, off of a 3rd place finish at the previous World Championship, so would love to see them back to join their countryman Chenia, who is already qualified thanks to the previous season. And yeah, that is the Heart of the Huntress season in a nutshell. We had a very explosive one card dominates the meta. Then we had no cards dominate the meta. Everything's fair game. People thought this was a little toxic. People thought this was a little boring. I haven't heard too many complaints about the Invoke meta other than, you know, Cosmic Call being a little overtuned. But ultimately, despite the large numbers here in the top 2 decks, people seem to perceive this meta better than they did the Siren Song meta. Thought there were a lot more options in what you wanted to do. And ultimately, I think we're ending things in a good place. And I cannot wait to see what the next expansion brings. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Boulevard. This has been a Heart of the Huntress recap.